All right, good morning, everybody. This is Dan Lyons at the National Weather Service in Raleigh with the Thursday briefing. We got quite a bit to talk about today. It's been pretty active over the past 18 to 24 hours across the area. And that trend is going to continue for the next 24 to 48 hours. So let's jump in. I got a couple of slides I want to show you talking about the weather today and tomorrow as we actually see some increased rain chances creep back into the area, which is certainly welcome news. But first, we actually got some rain last night, which is exciting for a lot of folks. I know, it's been awfully dry as of late. And truth be told, there's probably more spots on this map that didn't get rain than did get rain. But, folks pretty much along US 1 late yesterday evening, probably about 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock, I actually got some rainfall, and some spots did pretty good. You can see some rainfall totals on here. This is actually going back all the way to Monday, but you can clearly see an axis of maybe 1 to 2 inches of rain that fell across portions of Wake County and then off to the northeast, and then even to the south across portions of Harnett County. Got a little bit of rain at times here and there, but certainly good news at this point with how dry it's been. We will certainly take what we can get. Now, I did tease that we are going to have some active weather across the area, so let's dive into the upcoming weather pattern here. So if you were out and about last evening, yes, it rained, but it probably felt awfully humid out there, right? I mean, it's awfully humid. But if you were out this morning, it wasn't all that bad. I wouldn't say it felt great this morning, but it was certainly less bad than maybe it could have been. And that's because we had a front that moved through our area late last evening, overnight, brought in a little bit drier air to certainly the western half of North Carolina. That's where dew points are still pretty comfortable. It's all relative, but certainly compared to what we've had recently, dew points are actually reasonable. So we'll certainly take that. But that front has not made it really much past the coastal plain. So if you're tuning in to this recording and broadcast and you are around Interstate 95 or even east of there, it still feels pretty disgusting outside, and that's because we have that front that's stalled pretty much right across the central part of the state, the eastern part of the state. And if you're tuning in from that area, it's been raining pretty hard down there. We've actually had showers and thunderstorms sitting over the same area for several hours now. We've had flash flood warnings issued across portions of eastern North Carolina. There's flood watches in place. So that's what we see on the map for today. You see that area of darker green kind of across the eastern, I'd say, third of the state. That's the area where we're going to see some pretty serious rain continue through much of the day today. That front is slowly going to make its way back inland late this evening and overnight. So the rain that is occurring to our east right now is probably going to expand and blossom and really start to affect areas along Interstate 95, across the eastern portion of the triangle, even that same axis that I showed you right along US 1. Those folks are probably going to see quite a bit of rain overnight into early Friday morning, tomorrow morning as well. And we'll cover the details of exactly how much I'm talking about in a couple of slides here. That front's going to linger. It's going to sit still for much of the day tomorrow. It will again push east of the area on Saturday. Okay, so we are expecting rain today, tomorrow, and at least through a portion of Saturday. Sunday and Monday, though, it does dry out, and even Tuesday, for that matter, should be a pretty dry day. And then we start to get some rainfall chances return to the forecast by the middle of next week. During this period here, when we have these rain chances, temperatures are going to be around normal. They'll be in the upper 80s to low 90s, which is certainly good news. But once we dry out, latter part of the weekend into early next week, we're going to be back right into the mid to upper 90s. So a little bit of a break from the heat, but it's never really too far away this time of year. All right, so I mentioned showers, thunderstorms. Let's talk about severe potential. We do have a chance of thunderstorms, so pretty much everybody will hear some rumble of thunder at some point between now and Saturday, but we are not expecting severe weather. Okay, so that's certainly good news. We're not expecting, damaging winds or hail or anything like that. No, nothing too crazy. Just a good good rain, which is good news. Now let's talk about the rainfall that we're expecting. And I got some different maps on here, and some of the other maps that we usually have weren't updating this morning. So I put some of these in. They're a little bit more zoomed in, and they show a little bit more detail about what's going to go on across the state. So this is the rainfall that we're expecting today. Okay, and if you look across central North Carolina, there's some totals in there. You know, maybe a quarter to half an inch. Maybe not quite the totals that you see across the eastern part of the state. But there's definitely some totals in there for sure. And that is going to happen later tonight. Probably not until after sunset tonight is when we're really going to see rainfall chances start to increase across the central part of the state. You know, meanwhile, to the east where you see those yellows and kind of that orangish tan type shading over there, that's where folks have already gotten a good amount of rain. So some of that has probably already fallen at this point, but it will be a few more hours before we start to see rainfall chances increase across the central portion of North Carolina. If you're tuning in from the Western Piedmont, let's say you're tuning in from the Triad or maybe Winston-Salem or you know, Lexington, somewhere across the western fringes of our forecast area, I don't got the best news for you in terms of rainfall totals. It's not going to be much. There will probably be a pretty sharp back edge to this rainfall when it moves in, okay? So let's take a look at tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will see some higher chances across the Western Piedmont and pretty much the entire central North Carolina area. You see a lot of 1-inch totals on there. You know, maybe even 1 1/3 inches up near Roxborough or Rocky Mount or, you know, over toward Greenville, Goldsboro. But pretty much a good soaking rain everywhere. And this should be ongoing by daybreak. And if it's not by daybreak, it won't take much time past sunrise for showers to get their act together and get going. So again, a good amount of rain across the entire state. Now, once we get to Saturday, remember I had mentioned that front was going to move back to the east and eventually off the coast. This is the amount of precip that we're going to see before that actually happens. So you can see pretty low totals, 1/10 of an inch, maybe a quarter, you know, 4/10 of an inch if you're east of 95. But by and large, Saturday, you know, the trend will be for drier weather. So there will be some rain, but it's not going to be anything like we see on Friday. So let's give you a real quick rainfall total for Thursday through Saturday. If you take the rain we're going to get today, tomorrow, Saturday, add them up. Some spots look like they could approach 2 1/4 to 2.5 inches, especially east of 95. If you're in the triangle, you might not hit the 2-inch mark, but we'll be close to that. And if you're in the triad, maybe closer to an inch, 1.25 inches. So certainly some higher rainfall totals than we have seen. And for that reason, there are already some flood watches out to our east. This is also something that we're monitoring from our office, trying to figure out exactly where some of those heaviest rainfall totals are going to occur, how quickly that rainfall is going to occur. So don't be surprised in the least if at some point in the next couple hours you see a flood watch come out from our office in Raleigh, highlighting some of the areas that could be the most susceptible to heavy rainfall over the next 24 to 36 hours. Even though it's been super dry as of late, it really doesn't take much heavy rainfall to result in flooding of some low-lying, normally flood-prone areas. So I know it seems a little odd to consider a flood watch when we've had so much dry weather, but time and time again, we've seen drought turn into flood real quick. And let's keep stepping forward here for completeness sake. Let's look at some precip totals continuing through the weekend into next week. Here's Sunday. By and large, I don't think these amounts are going to amount to much at all. If anything, these amounts, what you see on the screen, maybe a little bit on the high side. If I had to wager, I would say it'll probably be more dry than wet on Sunday. Here's the precip map for Monday. That is not an error. There is no precip in the forecast for Monday anywhere, so that is not an error in the graphic. It's going to be dry on Monday. Tuesday, we start to see some pop-up afternoon showers and thunderstorms return to the area, kind of typical for mid-July. And then by the time we get to Wednesday, the final graphic that I have here for you, we will see some additional afternoon showers and thunderstorms, maybe a little bit more numerous, but it'll certainly amount to something. And here's your grand finale. Here's your 7-day total starting today, going all the way out through next Wednesday. If you add everything up, we do see some totals around 1 inch to 1.5 inches, maybe 1.5 inches in the triad, 2+ in the triangle, and then possibly 3+ across the northeastern coastal plain. So this is certainly good news for how little rainfall we've had as of late. We certainly don't want the flooding, but we sure could use the rainfall, and it looks like we may actually have a decent chance of getting it. And again, most of the totals that you see on this graphic here are going to happen in the next 24 to 36, maybe 48 hours. For that reason, the Weather Prediction Center has two areas highlighted in their excessive rainfall outlook. The outlook for today in that yellow shading, that's where the highest threat for flooding is. And that's east of the area that we're responsible for. Not by much, but that certainly matches up with reality right now because it's pouring pretty good in that area in yellow. But you can see tomorrow that area in yellow expands and kind of pivots to the west and starts to encompass portions of the triangle, the entire coastal plain, the sandhills, maybe not so much the Triad, the Western Piedmont. You still have a threat, what's called a marginal risk for flooding, and that's, with those rainfall totals I showed you a couple slides ago, you would expect the bigger threat to be in the east, and that's exactly what we see on this graphic here. And then Saturday, as everything starts to shift and move off the coast, no real threat whatsoever for excessive rainfall or flooding at that point. Now, I've alluded to this already several times. You've heard this, you've seen the briefings, you've seen it in various locations. Drought is here. It's been here for a while. We've had some expansions in the D2 level, the severe drought. That's what you see in that darker orange color. Portions of the Western Piedmont, like Forsyth County, and points west from there, now have a bigger area of severe drought. And if you were to go back to that first slide I showed you, yeah, there was some rain over the past 3 days, but those folks did not get much. To the east of the triangle, east of 95, east of Rocky Mount, east of Tarboro, those areas there, not much change in the drought, but for the first time in a while, we have some areas of D3 extreme drought starting to creep into the state. And again, those areas down there just west of Wilmington, they really didn't see a whole lot over the past 3 days. And compound that with how much rainfall they've had over the past month. For example, this observation in Whitefell's only had about an inch of rain over the past 30 days. That's resulted in some D3 extreme drought creeping into that portion of the state. So again, all the more reason that some of this rainfall that we're getting is good news. We don't want the flooding, but we certainly do need the rainfall. And we'll see what this drought update looks like next week once the rainfall that we're going to get today, tomorrow, and Saturday is incorporated into it. So let's talk about the tropics. Everybody's probably heard of or was following some of the impacts with Beryl as that thing slowly moved through the Atlantic Basin into the Gulf of Mexico, moved in through Texas. That storm, what's left of it, the remnants of it are all the way up in New England at this point, and not really a factor in our weather here. Now, there is a very small area that the Hurricane Center is monitoring just off the Florida, Georgia coast. And you can see in that graphic, there's that little area of clouds. That's where the yellow X is indicated. They're monitoring that for development. The Hurricane Center has said, it's very unlikely that will develop into a mature tropical system. They've put a 10% probability of that happening. That's pretty much as low as they can go with that. They at least want to acknowledge that there's something there. Regardless of this, regardless of whether that thing develops any further or not, those rain chances are pretty much a lock at this point. It's already raining to the east of here. That's going to be moving inland overnight as that front starts to move back to the west. So that little feature that you see off the coast there is not going to be a player in our weather really whatsoever. The rain is going to come regardless. And I guess the good news here is, for as much as we've talked about tropical weather over the past week or two, the big picture outlook here for the next 7 days, really nothing expected. The kind of the long wave pattern that would favor tropical cyclone development has shifted away from the Atlantic Basin. So we do look like there's a pretty good shot of quiet weather across the Atlantic basin for the next 7 days, if not a little bit longer. So we'll have a little bit of a timeout here from the tropical weather. All right. Speaking of big picture, longer term type outlooks, we have 2 updates from the Climate Prediction Center. I had mentioned that, this week we'll start to see some heat return to the area. Temps are going to warm back up. If we expand that out a little bit and look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, it doesn't look like, this doesn't look as bad as some of the outlooks that we've shared previously. If you've tuned into the webinars and seen this, you've seen 60 to 70, 70 to 80% chances above normal temperatures. That doesn't look like that's going to be the case at all. We kind of get back into a typical summer-like pattern where we get afternoon showers and thunderstorms. Yeah, temperatures get up into the low 90s every day. But that's pretty typical for mid to late July. And that's reflected in these outlooks here too. So kind of an equal chance of above normal or below normal temperatures across the area. And then you see that wide swath of green pretty much across the entire map for precipitation. And again, that's reflective of just, typical daily shower and thunderstorm chances like we usually see in July. They pop up, they fall apart, rinse and repeat pretty much every day. That's kind of what this outlook is showing us here. So, all right, 2 more slides for you here, and then we'll be wrapping up. Here's our chiclet table, our little cells here of graphical hazardous weather. You can see for today and tomorrow, it's really lightning and excessive rainfall that are the 2 key stories here. Lightning, just because there's going to be thunderstorms in the area. We're not expecting severe weather, so that's why you don't see anything highlighted there. But there, there will be thunderstorms around, and with that is the threat of lightning. And, using good judgment if you have to be outside when you hear that thunder, that's your time to get inside and get somewhere safe. But look for the lightning chances to be kind of significant for the next 2 days or so. Excessive rainfall, I already mentioned that for tomorrow. And then if you look at the forecast from Saturday through Wednesday, your eyes are probably drawn to the heat. Certainly Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And that's when I mentioned it looks like mid to upper 90s are going to return to the forecast. So once we get past this rain period here today, tomorrow, Saturday, we get a little bit of a break Sunday, Monday, and then we're back in the furnace Tuesday and Wednesday for sure. So let's bring it home here. Let's summarize what's going on. We have this stationary front to our east. We were already starting to see rain just east of our area of responsibility. It's been raining there pretty much all morning, and that's not going to stop. That will eventually pivot inland and affect central North Carolina late tonight into tomorrow. Don't be surprised in the least if you see flood watches issued for some additional locations at some point later today, as we start to pin down some of the timing and the areal extent of where some of the heaviest rainfall could occur. We do get back into a dry period late this weekend into the first part of next week for sure. But consequently, as we do that, temperatures are going to creep upward, and we'll be looking at temperatures once again mid to upper 90s. And of course, for those that are susceptible to heat-related illness, that's certainly something that folks would want to pay attention to once we get into next week.